Barbados holds general elections this Wednesday after becoming the youngest republic in the world. Thousands of Palestinians mourned the death of an iconic activist killed by the Israeli regime in the occupied West Bank. Bombings perpetrated by the Saudi coalition against Yemen have claimed the lives of at least 12 people, leaving 11 others wounded. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and now we begin this news brief in Barbados, where people go to the voting centers for the first time since the Caribbean nation became the youngest republic in the world late last year. A total of 108 candidates representing 7 parties and 9 independents are competing for a seat in the House of Assembly. According to the Electoral Authority, both the Barbados Labour Party, led by Prime Minister Mia Mottley, and the Democratic Labour Party presented a list of 30 candidates, that is one of every constituency. On the other hand, the Alliance for Progress Party of Bishop Joseph Atherley nominated 20 candidates, and the Barbados Solution Group nominated 11 candidates for Parliament. The Electoral and Boundaries Commission reported that just over 266,000 people are eligible to vote this January 19th. Over 3,000 electoral officials will be on duty on Wednesday to ensure that the voting process runs smoothly. This Tuesday, a donation of medical supplies arrived in Cuba, donated by musicians and solidarity groups in the United States. The first shipment of some 10,000 of a total load of more than 120,000 pounds to come was accompanied by Cuban musician Ignacio Nachito Herrera, who is based in the United States, and Aurora Gonzalez, the president of the Herrera Gonzalez LLC company. The cargo of family, mainly medical supplies for the protection of medical staff and patients, has an estimated value of $1 million. The donation arrived on a flight chartered by the donors themselves. The Cuban musician and composer also traveled to the island to participate in the upcoming 37th edition of the Jazz Plaza Festival. He is joined by a delegation made up of members of the Cuba Solidarity Movement in Minnesota and other U.S. states, in addition to musicians, business people from the world of arts, doctors, and health specialists. Among the visitors are the director of the Minnesota Orchestra, the president and member of the Artidia Cultural Company, and the president of the ECMO program of the Minnesota Hospital.
Going to stop. This is something that's going to continue forever and ever, because this is what we are supposed to be doing. We are supposed to be loving to each other, working to each other, and using the music, which is what I do. It is one of the most important language, it is one of the most important vocabularies to always keep people united and never divide. We have to continue to work hard with that under respect, because respecting to each other is the best way. We always are going to be win all the battle professionally, because I have faith like one day we will definitely see the reestablishment of the relationship in between these two wonderful countries. That's no doubt that's going to happen, because it deserves to be happening for the last 60 years. So I do believe that like many people, many millions of Americans, as you know already, they love Cuba. The same when they come to this country, it is the same feeling they bring back.
Now we continue to other topics. Federal government workers in Brazil are mobilizing to demand pay rises in line with inflation, with central bank workers walking out on Tuesday as others vow to take strike action if their demands are not met. Our correspondent Brian Muir has the story.
With the exception of the police, Brazil's 1.5 million federal government workers haven't received raises or inflation adjustments for years. With consumer prices spinning out of control, tensions are rising. On January 18th, workers paralyzed Brazil's central bank, and dozens of public workers' unions stood with them in solidarity.
We haven't had a salary adjustment since 2016. President Bolsonaro ignores all the government workers. He doesn't want to talk to us. We are out here asking the government to listen to us.
Since far-right President Jair Bolsonaro took office in 2019, inflation has risen by 26% and households have begun rationing staples such as beef and gasoline. Sinal, the Central Bank Workers Union, emphasizes that all it is asking for right now is an inflation adjustment.
We are holding this work stoppage today because the government hasn't made us a concrete offer of salary adjustment and career planning. The idea is that either the president of the central bank gives us a concrete offer, so today is a warning. If no proposal is made, or if we don't like the proposal, we are going to start talking about going on strike indefinitely.
Over 2,000 central bank employees refused to go into work, and union federations representing millions of Brazilian workers came out in solidarity and promised to join in a general government workers' strike if their demands aren't met.
CUT Union Federation's message today is that we stand together with all government workers in this just, legitimate and fundamental struggle.
Brian Mir, Telesur, Brasilia.
Thank you, Brian, for this report. And now we move on to other topics. Argentinian Foreign Minister Santiago Cafiero met with the U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken on Tuesday during a visit to the U.S. State Department. Cafiero, who arrived on Monday in the U.S. Capitol on a two-day official visit, also met with other U.S. officials and Argentinian representatives in the country. The trip followed Argentina's elections as president of the United Nations Human Rights Council, with Secretary Blinken congratulated. The two officials discussed Argentina's ongoing negotiations with the International Monetary Fund to restructure the record debt inherited from the previous administration. Colombian social movements have denounced the killing of at least 4 social leaders in the first 18 days of this year. The Institute for Development and Peace Studies denounced this Monday the murder of another social leader, bringing the total assassinated since the signing of the 2016 peace accords to 145. Communities suffering the ongoing violence have demanded speed and transparency in the investigations into the killings, as well as immediate protection for other leaders and human rights defenders who are threatened. We'll be right back after this very short break. But first, we'll leave you with more information regarding Barbados general elections that are underway today. Welcome back to From the South. Thousands of Palestinians mourned the death of an iconic activist killed by the Israeli regime in the occupied West Bank. Mourners held a funeral for Palestinian activist Suleiman AL-Hathalin, age 75, who had spent decades resisting the illegal Israeli occupation. He died 2 weeks after being run over by an Israeli military vehicle in the village of al-Qahir, near the occupied West Bank city of Hebron, during an Israeli police raid. The gathering drew mourners from across Palestine, both young and old, each with a story about how the activists had inspired them. Hathalin was the son of refugees who fled from their homelands in 1948 during the Nakba and settled in al-Qahir. Over the course of many decades, the Zionist regime demolished dozens of homes in the village multiple times. Hathalin was a fierce advocate for his community, which day in day out was under threat for being wiped off the map. Israel police uses NSO's Pegasus spyware to remotely hack phones of Israeli citizens, control them and extract information from them, Israeli newspaper Calcales reported on Tuesday. Among those who had their phones broken into by police are mayors, leaders of political protests against former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, former governmental employees, and a person close to a senior politician. One of the problematic instances that has been uncovered is the tracking of activists in the protests against Netanyahu while he was still in office. The protests against Netanyahu gathered momentum during 2020 as the COVID-19 pandemic hit the country and the first lockdowns were imposed on Israelis. Calculist, the newspaper, says that police have had and used Pegasus spyware since 2013. More than 20 activists were arrested on the steps of the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C. this Tuesday as the Senate started debating voting rights reform. President Joe Biden is pressing Congress to pass two major bills broadening access to the ballot box, placing tougher conditions on states attempting to change voting laws, and protecting election officials from undue influence. The Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act passed the House last week in a package that has majority support among senators, but neither was anywhere close to the 60 votes required to pass the 50-50 split upper chamber, with Republicans against the vote. Republican-run states across the U.S. have spent the last year leveraging defeated former President Donald Trump's false claims of a stolen election to introduce restrictive laws that opponents said are an assault on democracy and particularly impact on Black Americans' right to vote, already heavily disenfranchised.
Democracy is in crisis. Today we are out here demanding that the United States Senate pass the Freedom to Vote Act, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. It is a shame that in a country that claims to be the greatest democracy on earth, that claims to be the greatest nation on earth, that there are still people who are fighting for access to the ballot box. Every day Republicans and even some Democrats are banning or trying to figure out ways to suppress Black, brown, and poor people from the polls, and we're here to say absolutely not. In honor of Dr. King this week, we are here to fight for voting rights.
The group was sitting on the steps because, again, they believe in freedom and democracy, and we would like to draw attention to be drawn to the Congress, that they might understand that it's time for the filibuster to die. It's time not just for Democrats to vote for the passage of the John Lewis Freedom Act, but for all of the congressmen that claim that they support John Lewis, claim that they support Martin Luther King, step up and do the right thing. I would pray that my grandchildren and their peers would not have to fight for freedom and democracy. And without free elections, without voting rights, we don't have freedom, we don't have a democracy. And so I'm here.
And as the debate on the U.S. voting rights reform began this Tuesday, the Senate Majority Leader noted that there was a difficult road ahead.
In this chamber, Senate Democrats are under no illusion that we face difficult odds, especially when virtually every Senate Republican is staunchly against legislation protecting the right to vote. Win, lose, or draw, members of this chamber were elected to debate and to vote, especially on an issue as vital to the beating heart of our democracy as voting rights. And the public is entitled to know where each senator stands on an issue as sacrosanct as defending our democracy.
Now we move on to other topics. The Director General of the World Health Organization warned this Tuesday that the COVID-19 pandemic is far from over and cautioned against the narrative that the fast-spreading Omicron variant is risk-free.
Now is not the time to give up and wave the white flag. We can still significantly reduce the impact of the current wave by sharing and using health tools effectively and implementing public health and social measures that we know work.
Support that now is not the time to give up on the strategy. We're hearing a lot of people suggest that Omicron is the last variant, that it's over after this. And that is not the case because this virus is circulating at a very intense level around the world. You will see in our weekly epidemiologic update that will be published in a few hours that there's another 20% increase in cases in the last 7 days, with almost 19 million cases that have been reported to us. And again, that's a true underestimate of what is actually circulating around. And the deaths are holding steady around 45,000 deaths per week.
And the COVID-19 crisis is continuing to hit jobs hard around the world. Guy Ryder, Director General of the International Labour Organization, ILO, says, warning it could take years for employment levels to reach pre-pandemic levels. Ryder emphasizes that we need to see it as a unique common international effort in order to tackle the great divergence and combat increasing inequalities. On its latest report, the ILO warns of a slow and uncertain recovery as the pandemic continues to have a significant impact on global labor markets. This year, 5.9% of workers globally, or some 207 million people, are expected to be officially registered as jobless. Australia reported a record high number of COVID-19 fatalities on Tuesday, and its second largest state declared an emergency in hospitals to cope with surging patient admissions and staffing shortages due to the coronavirus. The 74 deaths occur in the country's three most populous states. New South Wales reported 36, Victoria reported 22, and Queensland 16. The previous daily record was 59 coronavirus-related fatalities on September 4th, 2020. The New South Wales government has ruled out a return to lockdown to counter the highly contagious Omicron variant. Victoria declared an emergency for hospitals in its state capital and several regional hospitals from midday Wednesday because of staff shortages and a surge in patient admissions. About 5,000 staff are absent because they are either infected or close contacts. Physiotherapists and medical students will be asked to take on nursing duties.
Today we're making a significant announcement about Code Brown activation across our health services. We've been saying now for some time that our hospital system is under extreme pressure, and the risks we're now seeing in COVID hospitalisations are testament to that. So we've reached a point in our health system where it's juggling severe workforce shortages. We've got more than 4,000 healthcare workers unavailable right now, alongside a vast number of patients with COVID-19 who require hospitalisation. Alongside that, an extraordinary workforce that are absolutely exhausted.
And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back. Bombings perpetrated by the Saudi coalition against Yemen have claimed the lives of at least 12 people, leaving 11 others wounded as the conflict shows no sign of ending. The attack took place in Sanaa, the capital of the country, and according to experts was one of the bloodiest actions against the city in recent years. According to the information provided by the Houthi movement, the attacks launched in recent hours claimed the life of a Brigadier General Abdullah Qasim al-Junaid, the former director of the Air Force, and several members of his family, including women and children. The latest bombings come hours after the attacks on the international airport and industrial zone in Abu Dhabi, the capital of the United Arab Emirates, which left at least 3 dead and 6 wounded and were claimed by the Houthi movement.
Residential homes were targeted, as well as the houses of Al-Junaid and Al-Hadal. The search is still ongoing to find Uncle Ali, but so far we haven't. Many of the Al-Junaid's family were killed and only one woman survived. Coalition launched 2 airstrikes. The first one was on the house of Al-Junaid and the second on the home of Ali Al-Hadal. 11 people were killed. The search is still going on for survivors in the rubble.
In Sudan, shops were shattered and streets barricaded with burning tires and rocks on Tuesday as angry citizens rallied following one of the bloodiest days since the October coup that derailed the country's democratic transition. Security forces on Monday opened fire, killing at least 7 people as thousands marched against the army's October 25th takeover, taking the total number killed in the crackdown since the coup to 71, according to the medics. The protests came as Washington ramped up pressure in a bid to broker an end to the month-long crisis in the Northeast African nation, with top United States diplomats expected to arrive in the capital Khartoum for talks. Sudan's main civilian bloc, the Forces of Freedom and Change, called for 2 days of civil disobedience to begin on Tuesday.
We took to the streets to express our opinion peacefully, but the military forces confronted us with live bullets and tear gas and sand grenades. Many of the protesters have been arrested, and until now there are more than 10 people killed and others wounded in critical condition. We call on all the Sudanese people and to all the free revolutionaries to barricade all the streets to announce the civil disobedience until the pushes fall. As for the conditions, all the streets have been barricaded and we are on work strike as instructed by the revolutionaries, and now as you see the entire street is barricaded from the beginning of Umak Street until its end and extending to 60th Street and up until Buri Street.
And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For Telesur English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.